Hey guys, Buckcat7 here. Okay, it is Thursday, April 2nd, 2020, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. Alright, guys, well, I hope everyone is well. I'm fine, I'm not sick. I never really do ever get sick, although I'm an old guy, so this, like, some stuff doesn't work right anymore, but it's the way it is when you get old. It's not pleasant or anything, but I seem to be fit as a fiddle as I've always been. I never really do get sick. Of course, I lived in the wilderness for a while up in the forests of the Northeast here in the United States. And, I got bitten by deer ticks. I was constantly picking deer ticks out. You could just sit on the ground up there in the forest and like take a look around in a couple of minutes and the deer ticks are like trying to crawl on you. They're crawling out everywhere there. But I got bitten up by so many deer ticks and bitten by so many mosquitoes, all the West Nile virus carrying ones and all this kind of stuff. But, look, I'm like indestructible. I don't know what it is, but just good genetics somehow or whatever, and my healing factor is just like excellent too. If I get like a cut or anything like that, it's healed in like a couple of days. It's gone, and that's just the way it is for me. And I never do get sick. And see, it's crazy because my sleep habits are terrible. My eating habits are terrible. I'm a smoker. Um, I do work out at the gym and everything when it was open. Not no more. And there probably won't be a lot of people returning to the gym either. I hope you guys are listening to all the different voices that have examined this whole thing. I was just listening to the radio where they were trying to insinuate the Chinese released this purposely or whatever, failed to report the numbers correctly. Well, that I believe because, their government is no good, just like none of them are any good, never ever going to be any good. But that doesn't surprise me or anything that they were screwing around the numbers or whatnot. But they're trying to insinuate the Chinese like sort of weaponized it, it's a weaponized form of this virus, and they're somehow insinuating that they like maybe they put it out there in the world. But it seems ridiculous. The Chinese got to sell all their crappy products to us, so why would you kill a goose that laid the golden egg? It doesn't make any sense. It never did. And to most economists, it doesn't either. But to all the hawks and everything like that, it's just, any reason, let's turn it into that. But, it just goes to show you, it doesn't matter what you listen to on the radio, whatever, just it's a lot of pontificating and agendas, and everybody takes advantage of this, especially the politicians now. They're all making speeches. Of course, everybody wants to know, hey, what are you doing about this? It's supposed to be protecting us to begin with. Doesn't matter from an enemy or a disease or whatever it is. It's supposed to be on the ball no matter what. And of course, we got to pay for all their mistakes. But now they're making all these speeches and everything, and it's just a golden opportunity now for, to perpetuate their image there that they want to portray of themselves. It's just like really bad acting. As Joe Salenti says from Trends Journal, it's like, it's acting for ugly people. Politics is acting for ugly people. But whatever, man. I'm fit as a fiddle. I don't know. I've been in every train station. I'm always wondering how it is it that these homeless people at the train station where I frequent constantly are not dead yet because, they donate, they're alcoholics, they're out there in the world, they barely get any sleep. And they're at the train station there with the hundreds of thousands of people passing through it, and the bathrooms and all this kind of stuff, and somehow they're just fine out there outside, sitting there on the bench next to each other. Nobody's separated them. And for 6 feet, they're not wearing masks, but they seem to still be there. It's just a miracle, I guess. I don't know, but in any case, let's get to the meat of this video here because I want to continue doing videos as much as I can. I can't guarantee it because I have not as much internet time as I used to have because of this thing. I can't really get anywhere I stay. Live kind of simply and all this kind of other stuff. So in any case, I'm sorry guys, but I'll keep on trying to get videos out if I can. My situation is really not conducive to it now, but hey, it's whatever, man. I'm trying to figure out what my next move is really, but you know, stimulus and unemployment aside, I would rather work, to be honest with you. But in any case, let's just talk about the quote unquote giants or large hominids, as I like to call them, state by state. And next up is Utah. And Utah has some very interesting ones, and I'm sure you'll recognize some of the illustrations here from this thing here, and sort of drawings of the finds there, and you've seen it before, but it's a very interesting state. And look, man, if let's assume that many of these accounts that I've been giving to you about the giants so far have been correct, let's say, okay? Skepticism aside and everything, let's just pretend that, many of them have been genuine. So when you hear about these accounts, it's just, you have to start thinking, folks, there's another so many, tens of millennia of the past that were stories beyond belief about civilizations that came sometime in the past that you just have no clue. But here are the clues, some of them, but of course they're denied by mainstream. But let's look at the ones from Utah here. And the first one here is sort of a more contemporary one, so it's interesting to see what they say here. Let's take a look at it. Utah man, Utah, St. George Skull. Expeditions magazine was recently sent the following information exchange between scientists. Discovery of an odd skull, thousands of years old and of an unknown race, has prompted quite an inquiry. We invite interested parties to contact the researchers for more information. Their information is included below. It is interesting this skull was discovered in the same area as the giants, and other unusual artifacts are being found. Southern Utah Skull from expeditionsmagazine.com. Colleagues have gotten word back on the skull discovered in St. George. Turns out that it's quite a significant find, according to one expert, the most unique skull I've ever seen. She says it appears to be thousands of years old, it has a couple of healed skull fractures, and strangely seems to be sort of a mixture of African and Native American, which really makes no sense, right? She was unable to point out strong differences between the skull and some sort of undiscovered Neanderthal other than the size of the mandible and the size of the missing teeth. She agreed that it was male and died around the age late 40s or early 50s. No osteological diseases were apparent. So what is it? It has not been dated, so the next step seems to be getting into the hands of a physical anthropology expert. Our expert is a forensic anthropologist for dating, either from U of Utah, University of Utah, or perhaps the Smithsonian, no, institution, if they are interested. Sure, they're interested. Twisting it into, it's acromegaly. Yeah, that's what it is. Sure, it is. It's, anything, that's not going to go along with your narrative is going to be something else. And that's a good way to explain it. And I've gone over that on this channel. It's Their claims are ridiculous because I looked at the reports and they're no good. As usual, their reasoning is flimsy and with gaping holes and things they don't understand. Amazing that I held it in my own hands and showed it to all my students last Friday. It is the poorly understood remains of someone who lived where I do, yet lived a vastly different, much more difficult life than my own here. That's all relative, folks. What they call a more difficult life or whatever. It's always led to believe that the people in the past somehow didn't laugh as much as we laugh or cry as much as whatever it is. It's ridiculous. It's like they didn't enjoy as much good times as we do. What, working 6 days a week at a 12-hour job or something like that? What that's Yeah, what a vast improvement there. Live in some, busted down old apartment somewhere. Okay. And what was the ancestry of this person? The questions continue. That's Kurt Walker, PhD, Dixie College, St. George, Utah. What about the cranium's 2-inch thick occipital bone? That's not normal even for a Neanderthal. Where did it come from again? I would be very hesitant to accept such a narrow age range, late 40s to early 50s, from looking only at the cranium. It's just a cranium, right? A skull is the cranium and mandible. Also, metric data are imperative for judging race, quote unquote, ethnic affinity, not simply gross morphological observations. A radiocarbon date is what you're looking for. Next, let us know. Melinda. There's a picture of the skull in our local paper, but I don't have a scanner. Perhaps over the holiday break I can get it scanned on my colleague's scanner and send it around, which was the picture we saw at the top. I suppose it's possible that the Spectrum, our local paper, has a website with the picture, but I don't have time to look for it. Final exams, meetings, sleep. By the way, my own pet wishful thinking theory that it was some sort of undiscovered North American Neanderthal seems about as far-fetched as ever. I studied some skull descriptions and pics last night, and this skull is missing some of the classic Neanderthal features. Cheers, Kurt. Huge brow ridges and sloping forehead, just like a Neanderthal skull. By the way, the skull came from a mature adult, perhaps 50 or so. Acromegaly or pituitary gigantism can cause gross enlargement of brow ridges and facial features, but usually the changes are really extreme. I gotta get rid of this. Ay, ay, ay. Sorry, guys, I don't know what that is there. Doesn't want to go away. Bagels. All of a sudden, I don't know. Okay, so 2 inches thick, it says that's really thick. Yeah, that's really thick. And this is, just another one of these accounts. Many of these skulls also had this incredible thickness to them. And again, we're not talking about Homo sapiens, we're talking about another hominid species or humanoid species for all we know, because we hear all these horns and tails and other things. Very strange, right? So, gotta keep that in mind. Colleagues have gotten word back on the skull that's discovered in St. George. Turns out that it's quite a significant find, according to one expert. The most unique skull I've ever seen. She says it appears to be thousands of years old. Has a couple of they're just repeating it again. I don't know. Maybe there's two reports in two different publications, but here's the scan of it there, and looks like it has pretty nice teeth, to be honest with you. So, and the occipital bone is this part of the skull. It's supposed to be that 2 inches thick. So, interesting stuff there. And it's just, a contemporary article. It's not these accounts from the Victorian period or early 20th century that we're dealing with here, or older. There's some that, within the past 50, 60 years, in the past 10, 20 years on this site as well. 8'6", Utah giant. A skeleton of gigantic proportions was found in Salt Lake City. This giant human was dug up by workmen near the Jordan River just out the city limits. The measurement of the skeleton was 8'6" in height. That's an awfully big a guy. Giant skeleton dug up in Salt Lake City. Over Utah, measuring over 8 feet. Indiana Progress, October 14th, 1891, from Fritz Zimmerman, the researcher on the Giants here in Nephilim Chronicles, which, is just a different take on this thing. The gigantic skeleton of a man measuring 8 feet 6 inches in height was found near the Jordan River just outside Salt Lake City last week. The find was made by a workman who was digging in an irrigation ditch. The skull was uncovered at a depth of 8 feet from the surface of the ground, and the skeleton was standing bolt upright. The workman had to dig down 9 feet in order to exhume it. The bones were much decayed and crumbled at the slightest touch. Of course, when exposed to air, like the majority, we're talking about in the 80 or 90% range of these skeletons that were uncovered in many of these accounts, just disintegrated into dust. And that's why we don't have a lot of them, or, whatever was left of them, of course, was kept deeply under wraps or just disposed of, whatever it is. But, it wasn't necessary in a lot of the cases, because when these things, depending upon the conditions, I guess, decayed rapidly upon, just the mere exposure to the air. So when these, the naysayers and the people who are skeptics, people say, oh, where's the giant bones? Where are they? And all this kind of, well, if you had an 80 or 90 percentile rate of decay on these skeletal remains, well, there's not much left there from whenever it was, without precautions taken, that would be left of them. And now you can't dig up any of these skeletons at all without, permission from local government authorities and national government authorities and whoever. So, that's how it goes. So it's an unfair advantage, in my opinion, to the skeptics and whatnot that they have it, because, many of these remains, if they could have been recovered at all, weren't handled in a way that would preserve them in very few instances. And I talked about one of them from these accounts here, where they attempted, somebody got wise and tried to, apply shellac to the remains, before they started to decay. Early sort of, preservation methods by somebody, clued in. All right, so, I had to dig down way deep, 2 to 9 feet to exhume it. The bones were much decayed and crumbled at the slightest touch. They were together with great care, and the skeleton was found to measure 8 feet 6 inches in height. The skull measured 11 inches in diameter, and the feet 19 inches long. So it's mighty big feet for the 8'6" guy there. A copper chain to which was attached 3 medallions covered with curious hieroglyphics. There they are, the hieroglyphics again, that were never deciphered. Nobody ever bothered. We can't know about them now, because all these things were handled with such great disregard. So, was around the neck of the skeleton, and near it were found a stone hammer, some pieces of pottery, an arrowhead, and some copper medals, which may have been this currency, evidently, that they had, which some people have mentioned in some of these accounts, and other people, contemporary researchers as well. Archaeologists believe that the original owner of the skeleton belonged to the race of mound builders. So way out there in Utah, they believe, because of all the other finds across the country, that this would belong to the race of mound builders. It makes a lot of sense. And I would say yes. When you're talking about these 8'6" giant humanoids, giant hominids, large hominids, giants, we're talking about the ones who, at this point in the past, from the transition from the Pleistocene into the Holocene, that their height, their physical characteristics, were starting to decay somewhat because of the change in gravity conditions, whatever it might be, like many of the megafauna, etc., who perished, but yet similar species survive for some reason because their cells could adapt more readily to the new environment, let's say. Okay? So these are not the big ones, 12, 14, 16 feet tall. So these are some at some transitional period in the ancient past. So dig this. You've seen this before, Man of Monte, Utah, and this was, some illustrations, some, on-site drawing that somebody did who discovered this thing with these dinosaur heads and other types of writing hieroglyphics, whatever they might be. It seems to be armored or helmet with shoulder, plates and a chest plate with like a cross on it, and so let's see what it has to say here. Sketch of the mummy male and figures on the mummy case. Mummy was 8 feet tall. Note figures of dinosaur head from hidden treasures of ancient American cultures. Dr. Heinemann followed Brewer into a tunnel that had been dug on a downward track. Well, let me show you the woman because this article is exactly the same for both. There's no point in reading both. So, but here's the lady found. This is the other strange headdress she had with dinosaur heads and chest plating and shoulder plates and a crown of some sort, weapons, etc. Strange hieroglyphics, more dinosaur heads. So let's read the article here. Barely squeezing and squirming like a worm through the narrow passageway. After a short distance, he came to an opening and, reaching down, felt the edge of a set of stairs that led into a chamber. The chamber was about 20 feet long and 14 feet wide. The air was stifling and the breathing was very labored. Several inches of fine dust covered everything and puffed up with each step that they took. About 25 stone boxes were stacked against one wall and another 20 against the other wall. And this is similar to, I believe, what was found in Burroughs Cave, in the Illinois cave that Harry Hubbard covers. I mean, he's famous for on his research on his channel on YouTube here, that you can say. And similar in that way, which interests me. So all these boxes, very strange. I've heard this before with other research here in the United States. Most were wrapped with a cover of juniper bark with pine pitch smeared all over them to make them waterproof. In the smaller chamber were two mummies of large stature. Dr. Heinemann describes the mummies. The texture of their skin was soft, almost moist, like tanned leather. In the cave I saw an abundance of weapons, swords, tools, copper and metal plates of various sizes, all of which were very curious. Some of the copper plates were of a strange composition, shattering like glass into fibrous pieces, not unlike the windshield of a car if dropped. I believe that this chamber houses at least two different ages of antiquities. Very interesting there. I mean, how amazing is this? And, Where is it? What happened to it? You know, can we see this stuff? From the book Treasures of the Ancients by Stephen B. Schaefer, Cedar Fort, 1996, but it's no date for when these things were discovered there. And how curious is that? So again, as I said before, the history certainly of the past worldwide, and especially here in the Americas, is far different than anybody can possibly imagine. It's a far more exciting story than the Nephilim and the Anunnaki and all that kind of stuff. It goes even far beyond that, folks, into like fantasy world, So there's just, century upon century and millennia upon millennia of a story of activities and civilizations on this planet that we can't even possibly imagine, and for a longer time period, and where those people came from, and where the large hominids came from, and humanoids and giants and everything, and little people and everything else. Because there's certainly little people, right, pygmies, but there's also people who are just like miniature human beings, that are of shorter stature in this world. And, Homo sapiens, for the most part, killed off, most of the people that they didn't like in the areas where at least they had control. But, luckily not for the Watusian, not for the Native Americans who were here in the 1800s, who were among the largest, tallest people in the world. For some reason that has to be explained, but it's not readily explained because everybody of average height is, the average is what is expected. See, that's what makes it unusual and unexplainable as well. The attempt to explain it by all these things, diet, health, blah, 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 practices, whatever it may be, but yet our height has we've stopped growing, essentially is what it is, and they're not quite sure why, because according to their theories and hypotheses, we should just be growing and growing and getting bigger and better, but for some reason it stopped and they don't know why. And the easy thing to think about here is because the gravity levels of gravity leveled out at some point, and that's it. It's all again. If somehow, gravity changes where it becomes less intense at some point in the future, which who knows, might happen, doubt it, but it may increase even. So, gotta consider that. That's more plausible, and it would just change everything. So, look at this one here. Giant with horns. So another horn giant, as we've heard about many times before, leading me to think about humanoids. So that's a different category actually than what we consider large hominids or the giants or whatever it is, because if they're humanoid, then may not be related to hominids. So maybe just tangentially or something like that. So you have to consider that with all these other features that seem very animal-like. Or who knows who was experimenting with genetics in the past, which is something that I sort of explore on my channel, and that's why I go into corn so deeply, because it's not me, it's the University of California that claims it's the man's single most, you know, achievement ever in genetic engineering by people in the ancient past, ever of all time, single greatest feat of genetic engineering of all time. That's what they say. Okay? Somebody did that in the past, and why not so many other things if you want to really think about? You want to know where all the cryptids came from? Well, the cryptids were probably GMOs. And, probably weren't meant to breed or anything like that, but some of them did because that's how life is. You know, it solves that problem. You see, but, like if let's say there are all these cryptids that you can possibly name, whatever they are. Doesn't matter. I love hearing about all of them myself. But so let's say they weren't meant. Maybe they're like Monsanto's Terminator seeds. Just meant to reproduce. To be produced, and that's it. Not reproduce. And some of these things actually got out of the laboratory, like maybe this coronavirus got out of some laboratory somewhere, right? So why not larger organisms? You got to think about all these things, folks. It's just that's why people bring up these possibilities. Okay. So let these say these things were GMOs or experimental animals, insects, plants, whatever they may be, and they got out somehow. It's catastrophe, cataclysm, building gets destroyed, whatever. These things go into the wild. They're not meant to reproduce, but somehow they're able to. But it's difficult for them because they weren't designed for it. You see, so they overcome it, but it's still very difficult for them. Maybe most of the young of the cryptids don't survive for very long. Maybe it's difficult for them to breed. Maybe all these farms. That's why they're not in great numbers. Okay, and well, for other factors as well. See what I'm saying? Okay, so join with horns from Ogden. Let's hear about this guy. The bones under which this this what this I don't know was found occupied a space in the gravel is separate and apart the other skeleton. This is it is said indicates that the dead man was deserving of some discrimination, owing probably to some feat of prowess which distinguished him from his fellows. He was a large man, and the protuberances on the back of the skull. Now, these are on the back. We've heard of some on the side or sort of in the front. So, this is even yet at the back. So, this is another type, maybe, just like similar. There were, tribes of people all over the planet, and maybe there's tribes of large hominids with different features, who knows? I don't know. You can imagine anything, I guess. The protuberance on the back of the skull were so much more prominent than those found on the other skulls that the men thought that they had discovered a man with horns. The story was enlarged upon and created quite a flurry of excitement as the more superstitious believed that the bones of the devil had been located. This skull was carefully examined by medical men who did not hesitate to say that these bones or just protuberances just back of the ears were more distinct and much longer than those of the skull of today. They would not attempt to explain why such was the case, but attribute it to some freak of nature. Although well versed in the study of physiology, the medical men refused absolutely to give an idea as to the possible identity of the men whose skeletons these were. So, look, I mean, without them knowing possibly about all the other accounts, because it may have been only this is 1906. Okay, I guess. And, without putting all of it together somewhere where it's, somebody would understand, maybe these people had no idea or whatever. But, skulls with horns, with them, we've been reading about skulls with horns since I started reading about the giants here. So, this is a common occurrence, just the location of the protuberances and, whether they be horn buds in some cases and other weird, configurations of skulls, everything. So, look, man, we're talking about something very, very strange going on in the past that seems so very interesting. You could only imagine what it must have been like. Just sweep all those, but, look, I'm not saying, when people are talking about the Anunnaki or whatever it is, the biblical stories about the giants of the past. This may be the actual part of the historical nature of the Bible as referring to these creatures living in the past. And they're giving account to these people just surviving after this cataclysm, and at least on the versions of the Old Testament that we know of, right? So they may be accurate in that sense, certainly, and giving an honest, but recounting over millennia or centuries when it's finally written down. There may have been more details, but you got to remember all the books that were burned by the Catholic Church, especially during the Inquisition. Is just everything we could possibly want to know about the past probably was, torched at Alexandria and, by the Inquisition and anything. So just it's happened all over the world, all throughout the past, and that's why we can't make sense of anything because of our. And who does that? So the leadership of whoever and whomever, the leaders, the grand leaders, the psychos, the megalomaniacs, and all these kind of people. The people who seek power, folks, are often the people who should never have any. That's how it often is. None of us seek power, but the people who do are the very people who should not have any power. Salt Lake 8 foot man, another big old guy there, and I would say from the transitional period from the shift from the Pleistocene to the Holocene, and then their height degraded over time as it tried to cope and level out with the gravity, oxygen, whatever it is, whatever conditions allowed for larger animal species and hominid species. Those conditions deteriorated and then leveled off to our current conditions where our height has stopped growing, and that is the supporting evidence in my research that I give as to why. Okay, it's just supporting evidence that the gravitational field leveled off, was at a much less intense field and became more intense after whatever it was that went on that we say was the ice age or whatever it is, or something happened, these great cataclysms and everything that certainly have more to do with it than any sort of ice age event thing that they talk about. Ice ages take thousands of years to happen. Events take shorter periods of time, although they may be recurring and may screw around the weather of a planet because it's electrically driven anyway. Okay, skeleton of a man measuring 8 feet in length has been found on the Jordan River. I think this is going, it's reporting on the first account of it, but listen to what they say. Near Salt Lake City, some defunct prophet, likely the Ketchum Keystone, September 26, 1891. So it's a slight, on the Mormons, who certainly, inhabit a large part of Utah over there. So a defunct prophet, likely. But, the Mormons say what the Jaredites or whatever it is that they refer to as the giants, and that their research is aimed towards that end or whatever. So everything they research makes it fits the Jaredites or whatever. But I like their research. They do great research and everything. We just, you got to buy their story. But, I don't know what they refer to as the Jaredites. I'm saying are the large hominids, and there's more than one. More than just the Jaredites, my Mormon friends. Just all kinds of guys. All kinds of weird guys. Animal looking guys with horns. And some tough looking characters with beards and helmets and stuff. And 8 foot sixers and you name it. But they got good teeth for some reason, not like us. Alrighty, folks. Well, I hope you like that and you're entertained by that. And it's the least I can do for you guys. Probably no matter where you are in the world now, you have to deal with this sort of medical martial law, because it's really what it is. They neglected to inform everybody. See, when they tell people they can't assemble in groups, see, you know, if you're American, you should know what I'm talking about. But if you're not from another country, something, here's how it is here. The Constitution explicitly prohibits the government from barring people from gathering together, you see. So what they have to say first before they say, hey, large groups, people can't gather together in parks or congregate parties, whatever. The first thing they have to tell you, this is their duty to tell you, all right? Their duty is to tell you that your constitutional rights are being suspended. They have to tell you that first. You see, that's their duty to do that. I carry a copy of the Citizens Rule Book in my back pocket, and as far as I know, if you're going to do that, it doesn't say that they have to do that, but by all rights, if you're suspending people's constitutional rights to assemble, then you got to tell them that right off the bat by saying as much. You see, it's disingenuous not to do that. See, and then the people, when they hear that, they can decide whether they like that or not, for whatever reasons, okay? Or perhaps it would, inspire people to take a deeper look at their politics. But whatever it might be, I'm just telling you, if you're telling people that they can't assemble, well, that's in breach of their constitutional rights for whatever reason. Doesn't matter. It's legitimate. It could be legitimate. Of course it could. But then you have to inform them of as much, you see. You can't leave that out by omission there, just to keep your image squeaky clean, see? And that's what it is, folks. Every politician will avoid telling you that, because it's a poisoning the well kind of thing, see? All right, folks. So I hope you like that. Please hit the like button. I hope everything finds all of you well. Please keep yourself safe. This may be some sort of biological weapon or something like that. Who knows? Or why not slip it? You got a bad flu going on, and then you could throw a biological weapon out there in tandem with it to really kill off people if you wanted to, I suppose, right? I don't know. Just saying. But anyway, guys, please keep well, and I will try to get a new video out to you as soon as I possibly can. All right? All right, guys. Budcat7 signing out. Peace.